So we are now recording. Take it away, Joe.
Great, thank you, Veridon. Okay, welcome everyone. So today we're going to be looking at some of the various integration options that you can implement to try and get your on-premise data into Dynamics 365 or the Power Platform to start getting some real benefit from it. So we'll touch upon just who I am very, very briefly. We're then going to take a look in terms of so when it comes to integrations of this nature, what have been the sort of traditional challenges? And, we'll then look at, okay, well, what's actually changed? Why is it actually now a good time to actually integrate? What tools have you got there to help speed you along on that journey? We're then going to jump in and then take a look at some of the options that you've got. There's a mixture of different ones that you've got, both courtesy of Microsoft and also some other third-party providers as well. We're going to take a detailed look at the on-premise gateway today. So we're going to show you how you can get that deployed out into your environment, connecting up to on-premise data, and use that as part of either Dynamics 365 or Canvas Power App. And in the end, we'll just close off with some thoughts of mine, have a Q&A session and things like that. So as I say, feel free to just queue up your questions in the chat and we'll get round to them towards the end. So a little bit about me on the slide here. So I sort of run my own sort of consultancy practice, Gold Partner, based up sort of in the northwest of England. As you can see, I'd like to collect all the shiny badges that Microsoft like to give out. So I've been working with Dynamics 365 for probably about 5 years now in total, coming more, I guess, from a technical background, really, when it comes to implementing solutions, although these days doing quite a lot of work with the Power Platform as well. For my sins, also Prince 2 project manager, certified Scrum Master, and also involved as part of the Northwest Committee. So we have meetings fairly regularly up in Manchester, well, virtually at the moment. So, but yeah, so feel free to check us out if you are in Manchester and want to get involved as part of the local events up there. Okay, so when we think about integrations, it's sort of got this dread around it. And, most people, when they sort of see it for the first time, this is probably their default reaction to it. It's just the horrible thing that nobody wants to deal with. It's just not nice whatsoever. Why is this the case? Why have they got such a bad rap? Well, I think when we think about in terms of what they involve, they can be ridiculously expensive. And I'm not just talking here about in terms of monetary terms, but also in terms of the effort to develop them, build them out, make sure they're all working, and then to maintain them and manage them from there. There's a human cost there to the business, to the organization, to sort of maintain that. And as a result of being so expensive, invariably they start to become complex, and as a result, we need to start having, all sorts of complicated documentation in place to be able to sort of manage it all, so it's, death by acronyms, ALDs, HODs, going through CAB approvals. Ugh, you just want to just want to end it all after you get into that sort of territory. But they are necessary because it's the only way that you can make sense of it. Because, as a consequence of all this expensive effort that you've done, the integrations that have been built out traditionally require this almost insane level of technical expertise just to sort of maintain and run and stuff like that. And you're going to need somebody with knowledge in the business to be able to run that, which takes us full circle. You're back to trying to get trained, skilled people into the organization. We generally have a bit of a monetary cost towards that, and you're in a sort of vicious cycle almost. And what may end up happening over the life cycle of a potential project, so let's say that as a business we decide, okay, yep, we want to look at an integration with our on-premise data, we want to get it into the cloud, get some benefit out of it. So yeah, let's kick off the project. We build out the solution, architect it all, make sure that we've crossed all the T's, dotted all the I's, we think it's good to go. Get the project team assembled, get that all initiated and kicked off. And then what tends to sometimes happen is you enter this protracted development cycle where it's taking, literally months to actually put in place something that's actually useful to the business. And as a consequence, you get to the point where when it's actually being reviewed and implemented, it's no longer meets the original requirements. So what do? You're back at square one. And really, you might as well have just been doing all this all the time, all this money that's just been wasted and burned away. It's just, it would have just been easy just to have done that, really. So that's the sort of like the glass half full side of integrations, I guess. But let's take a more positive look at what if you get them right, what can they sort of do? Well, here's some of the things on here. So traditionally, well, these days, I guess, in terms of when we're looking to move things to the cloud, we can hopefully try and streamline that journey by getting some of our data that's sort of on premise or in silos into the cloud and actually working to the benefit. We can be more agile, we can release things more quicker, we've got the tools at our disposal so that we're not necessarily reliant on developers or technical experts to build out our solutions. And ultimately, what we can try and ensure as well is that we've got a better experience, not just for maybe internal stakeholders in our business, but also for customers as well. Because that's our ultimate aim. We want to be making sure that we're addressing the needs of our customers and that we're not sort of falling by the wayside when compared to our competitors potentially. So when it comes down to it, it's really important that we not only identify a solution that's cost effective, and again, I mean that in terms of both monetary value and also time to implement, but also one that sort of tries to sort of address the typical concerns that may arise from an integration, and those will be around security. Okay, where's the data going to be going? Is it being transmitted securely? Is it being stored encrypted at rest? All these sort of things come up, and typically it's been difficult to try and marry the two together. You can either have a cost-effective solution or one that's secure, and that's the sort of the balance in that you're having to look at. So when it comes to the Power Platform, then this is arguably potentially a new beginning for integrations for getting on-premise data involved as part of the cloud business systems that we look to implement. And I don't want to be sounding too sort of happy clappy, drinking the Kool-Aid type thing, but you could argue that the Power Platform is a bit of a game changer in terms of trying to eliminate a very costly integration project. And because of the tools that we've got available now, it's possible to do all the things that we've got listed here on the slide. We can not only do traditional things such as pushing data up into our CDS database, but we can now do things like triggering Power Automate flows. When something happens on premise, we can publish our on-premise data online for people to view and to share that out. We can even develop a low-code application that's sitting on top of our on-premise data, and we can read, write, we can do update, we can do everything. It's as if the database or the system is in cloud already, which is really great. We can start to use these solutions for the benefit, and we're not sort of sitting in the Stone Age wondering, how are we going to sort of keep up with our competition or keep up with the Joneses. And really, it's potentially something that's quick to implement. So in the case of the on-premise gateway, as we'll see during the demo, this can take less than 30 minutes to basically install and get set up. And as part of this, you can be assured from the gate that any sort of security and access concerns that typically would have to face as part of this, they can be addressed. Microsoft providing you with the tools to be able to sort of deal with that, as a sort of, not so much as sort of like a throwaway concern, as if we don't care about it, but as if, yeah, okay, we've thought about this up front, and it's fine, we've handled it. So that's the benefit that you potentially do with this. But it can be a bit of a minefield. There are a wide array of tools, but what I would say with that is that we're at the point now where you've really got no excuse for at least just having a look, seeing what's out there, seeing what you can do, and experimenting. And if there's something there that you think is going to have a benefit, then go for it. And you'll probably find yourself pleasantly surprised. It's not as difficult as it was in the past, perhaps. So really, but the purpose of today's session, my sort of mission statement, as it sort of is, I just want to try and inform and guide you in terms of what are some of the commonly available tools today that you can use to incorporate on-premise data sources into not only Dynamics 365 but into the wider Power Platform. So we're going to do a bit of a deep dive into the 6 options we mentioned earlier. Try and take a sort of balanced approach by looking at the pros and cons. We're going to look in detail about one of them, the on-premise gateway. The others we're just going to talk at a really high level due to time constraints today. There is demos. So I've rather foolishly not prayed to the demo gods today, so we'll see what happens. I have got a backup option if things go completely and utterly wrong, but we'll wait. But hopefully we'll hope for the best. And the thing to mention is that with some of these tools, you can use them across multiple products within the Power Platform. So Power BI, Power Apps, Power Automate. Others are literally just lift and shift your data into CDS. So therefore, you're not going to get the benefits of being able to connect up to use a Power Automate flow to connect up to the data, use Power Apps, etc. Potentially you could, but it's going to be difficult for you to do that potentially. So just keep that in mind. Only if some of these tools are basically applicable across the whole stack, really. There's a couple of pictures as well, which I have. I'm choosing the words lovingly selected from online sources as opposed to just rather shamelessly pinched. So yeah, just wanted to give appropriate credit there for that. Okay, so let's take a look first of all at the tools that Microsoft give us out the box. And the big one, the one that's sort of the one gateway to rule them all, perhaps, is the on-premise gateway. And this is the one that gives you the most spread across the Power Platform. So whether you're building solutions involving Power BI or Power Automate, or you're just wanting to get data into CDS, this is your tool. This will do the job. It's something that you can install. You install into your environment. It's manageable then from Office 365. You don't have to be going onto a server each time to make sure that it's all working fine. You've got some flexible deployment options with that, with some caveats, which I'll go back to in a second. And the great thing as well, if you are doing things that are perhaps more technical, involving things like Azure Logic apps and things, then this can support it as well. There's a few more setup steps involved. You have to provision some stuff on Azure, but this will work. This will just work out of the box. Now, a few things to mention with this. You're going to need admin privileges to get this deployed out into your environment. So you're going to have to sort of, buy a box of chocolates for your favorite system admin, or somehow get privileges yourself. I'm not going to condone either option there. You've got some limitations. So Microsoft do enforce some limitations in terms of the amount of data that you can read, write, and potentially there will be some latency. If you're very fortunate to be in a situation where you've got things like ExpressRoute in place, then that might help you along a bit. But just keep in mind you have got some top level limitations in terms of size of data, the amount of time it takes to sort of read a request and things like that. And really what I would say about personal mode is keep in mind that is just for Power BI only. And personal mode, to be frank, is a bit rubbish anyway. I wouldn't really recommend you use it. So wherever possible, stick to organizational. You'll have an easier time. Personal mode is really just for very specific, okay, I'm testing something for Power BI, or I just want to experiment and just see what the process is like for installing it for the first time. But if you're not sure where to start, go for this one. This one is really easy, straightforward to implement, and you can't go far wrong with it, I would say. Okay, another option you can look at, and this probably fits more into the category of when you're doing, slightly more complicated things. So traditionally, when developers were looking to get, data into Dynamics 365 for an on-premise system, you'd be having to look at tools such as SQL Server integration services to sort of address those requirements. These days, where things have moved on a little bit, you've now got some quite effective options available within Azure to help you along. And one of these is Azure Data Factory. And what this lets you do is similar to how the on-premise gateway works. In fact, I was told that they're pretty much the same code base, apparently. But what you can do is you install what's called a self-hosted integration runtime. Say that fast, 6 times fast, and I'll give you a prize. You install this into your environment. It works on the same basis as the on-premise gateway. It lets you connect up to data sources. And then from there, you can use the capabilities of the Azure Data Factory to process your data, not just going into CDS, but also potentially out into other systems as well. And the great thing about this is that it's a pay-as-you-go model. You only pay for what you need. So if you're just moving data across, once a week or maybe a few times a day, you're only going to pay probably about, maybe a couple of quid per month. So that's the price of a cup of coffee to do some really complex data integrations. And what I would say with Data Factory, if you're trying to adopt a more sort of DevOps type mindset, you're looking to integrate with tools such as Azure build pipelines, Azure DevOps, and things like that. This tool is so much better compared with traditional SSIS. You can literally, at a few clicks of a button, get things integrated in there, and it all just works. What I would say though is that this is a very much more technical option. You're going to need to have I'd probably advise more of a SQL Server background if you're going to want to start to consider this. You're going to have an investment in Azure as well. And one thing to mention is that you can't. So if you're in a situation where you want to use a bit of Data Factory with a bit of on-premise gateway, keep in mind Microsoft advised that you do not install them on the same machine. I'm not sure why that is, because I've had situations where they have been installed and they seem to work fine. But generally, you don't want to be going against what Microsoft generally advise. So really, what I'd say with this option is that, okay, if you need to do more complex data processing, if you're finding yourself just reaching across to Business Intelligence Development Studio, BIDS, to develop a package, I'd think twice and actually start to consider and look at what Azure Data Factory can do. It is going to be probably the way in which you do these things in the future. And it's got to a point now where it's actually probably quite stable and quite effective as a product as well, which is even better. So, I could talk all day about Azure Data Factory. I have done. So if you want to find out more about it, I've got the link on here to another video that I've done. Feel free to check it out. The video will basically show you how you can do a sort of very simple ETL type scenario, getting data from on-premise system into Dynamics 365, and it talks through some of the benefits that Azure Data Factory can bring to the table as well. Okay, a third option that you can look at, and again, we're going ever so more technical as we go down this list. So this is really for one where you've exhausted all of the possibilities, and you need to have a very fine degree of control in terms of what your integration is doing. So maybe you're doing more complex things. You need to work with file data. You need to connect to multiple systems at the same time. What you can do is that you can stand up a bespoke or pre-built web application in Microsoft Azure. You can then use something called the Hybrid Connection Manager to install effectively an agent into your on-premise environment, and then from there you can then query and access on-premise resources as if they were in cloud. So potentially what this option could allow you to do is so let's say you're in a situation where you need to expose read-only data from an on-premise system as, let's say, a virtual entity. This could be a viable option in terms of exposing that out. So what you would do is you would develop a OData compliant endpoint, deploy it to Azure Web App, then use the hybrid connection to basically make that connection to your on-premise data sources. And then from there, you can then consume and work with your data as if it was sort of there in the cloud. So as I said already, this option is one where you're going to need probably some very serious technical know-how to implement. It can potentially be very costly as well. So you can see on the slide here, it's priced based on the amount of gigabit throughput data going back and forth. So you get 5 gigabytes included at £7.29 a month. After that, you're charged on a per gigabyte level. So potentially, if you're shifting and lifting terabytes of data, that I wouldn't want to see that as your statement. I probably want to cry at the end of it, I think. And as I've said, similar to Azure Data Factory, you're going to have that investment in Azure, which may or may not be what you want to do. So as I say, this is one which potentially you've exhausted other options. You need a highly bespoke way of being able to work with your data as if it was in the cloud. This option is going to tick your boxes more than certainly, but don't go into it thinking that it's just going to work straight away. It's going to take some time to get it into place. Okay, so at this point then, I'm going to jump across and we'll just give you a demo in terms of how you can get the on-premise gateway deployed out into your environment. So I'm just going to open up my little Hyper-V machine down here. So I've got just a good old Windows Server 2012 R2 machine on here, just a little box on here. And we've just got SQL Server deployed out and a couple of the sample databases. So what we're going to pretend today is that we're interested in getting some of our data into CDS. We want to import it in and have a continuous sync of that data. The table that we're interested in is actually the production.product table. So if we just have a quick look in there in terms of what we've got, it's nothing too complex. Yep, just product data in here. So what we want to do is want to get this data into our CDS environment. We're going to create it as a new custom entity, and then from there we can then consume it and work with it as if it was sort of in the cloud. So first things first, we need to actually go across into our Power BI portal. So when you're deploying out the on-premise gateway for the first time, you need to have a license and have the appropriate privileges within Power BI to do it. And what you would do is you've got a little download icon at the top up there. You just click that button there and just go to Data Gateway. Now it is quite a chunky download. So here's one I made earlier. So I'm just going to run this and get this installed. It's going to ask you, yep, okay, I accept license terms of license. No issues with that. We'll get this deployed out. Hopefully it won't take too long. But now would be an excellent time for questions if anyone's got any.
There aren't any questions in the chat, but if anybody wants to ask one by unmuting, feel free.
I'm going to try. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, hi, this is Frank. I'm not sure you can answer this now, but I'm having problem pushing a relatively large amount of data to my Dynamics 365 environments through CDS because of the various rate limits.
Yeah.
And I've tried pointing a relatively dumb Azure Data Factory pipeline to it, and it wasn't smart enough to go around those limits. Am I missing something? Is there something smart that needs to be done to push data, or is it just take it very slowly?
So the issues I've had before is actually when pushing large data from Data Factory into CRM is that some of the Microsoft plugins can break things. So there's a whole bunch of activity feeds plugins that can sometimes cause weird transaction errors. I think what I would advise, if it's possible to batch up your data and deal with it in sort of chunks, you can also increase the amount of throughput connections going into Dynamics 365 from Data Factory. But keep in mind that there is a platform limit in terms of the number of concurrent connections. I can't remember what it is off the top of my head.
It's quite close. That's what I've been eating.
Yeah. So I'd probably recommend if you can try and batch your data more and maybe spread it out over a longer period, that might be a way of being able to address that.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. We just got a quick question here from Jay Howes. Would you have to download the gateway for each of the applications, such as Power BI, and then again for Power Automate? No, it's one gateway, which will give you coverage across all of the different services, which we'll see in a second. Okay, so the install's finished. So at this point, what I need to do is I need to register my gateway onto the onto Power BI, onto Power Platform, and I do this by just getting signed in. It's going to ask me for the good old username password prompt, so let's see if it accepts it all. Okay, so that's all good. At this point, we've got two options. We can either set up a brand new gateway, or we have got options if we've got an existing gateway that we want to shift across. Maybe we've accidentally, destroyed a virtual machine, closed it down, and we need to rebuild it on. Or maybe somebody's deployed a gateway and they've left the organization. We've got the option here to do that via this down here. But for the purposes of today, we just want to register a new gateway. We're going to call this on-prem in cloud. You've got options to register a gateway as part of a cluster. So for for situations where you need higher resiliency, protection for DR protection and things like that, you can create a cluster of machines that are effectively the same gateway. So if one goes down, the other can basically pick up the slack. And then we need to also specify a recovery key. So I'm not really too fussed about what this via is on here, so I'll just put anything on there. We can also specify the region which you want the gateway to deploy into. So in most cases, it will figure out the best region for you based on what you're connecting up as. For some reason, it's recommending that Australia Southeast is the best region for me, but I'm just going to ignore that because that seems a bit odd. And we'll just do configure at this point. Okay, so our gateway is online. It's ready to go. As you can see down here, it's ready for use within both Power BI, Power Apps, and Power Automate. As I mentioned earlier, if you wanted to use it with Logic Apps as well, and also Azure Analysis Services, you can do that. But what you have to do is you have to go into Azure and set up a gateway for the on-premise gateway. Yeah, seems bizarre and really weird, but that's what you have to do. You do that, you basically select your gateway from a drop-down list, and then from there you can start to work with it. This gateway is all ready to go. I can just close this browser down here, give my browser a quick little refresh here, and we should see we've got a brand new gateway ready to go. Yep, so here it is. So I've got some warnings here that maybe it might be slightly out of date, so I can basically just upgrade it from here. I can add on some properties on here, who it belongs to, department. There's some settings I've got down here as well. I can also change who's got privileges to administer the gateway. So sometimes you might need to do this if somebody needs to work with the gateway or maybe add connections to it. You'd have to go into the Power BI portal and add this on specifically. But at this point, our gateway is ready to go. So now we can start to look at loading some data in from our SQL Server database. So if I jump across now into Power Apps, we're just going to go down to data and we're going to do a data flow. So that's one I made earlier. So we'll just do on-prem in cloud D365 UG. So data flows leverage Power Query to be able to bring in data from different sources, and it lets you shape and model the data before you chuck it in. So potentially, you know, if you're not doing too complex ETL type stuff, this might actually tick your boxes. Chances are, though, if you are needing to do more complex things that you need to move out to other solutions like Azure Data Factory, things like that. But I can see I've got my variety of different data sources in here. I can select my SQL Server database over here. So what I want to do is I want to create a new connection. It's detected my on-premise in cloud data gateway down there. I just need to pop in a few details about my server. So I'll just grab the server name from up here. Go down here. And the database name is AdventureWorks 2014. Yes. 2014. So I've actually already specified this connection previously on here, so it's gone in there and detected that with my connection on there, so I can just click next at this point. And if you're familiar with the development experience around Power BI, some of these steps will look pretty familiar. The connection details is, oh, I just dropped my phone on the floor. Let's try logging in again, see if that does it. Okay, I've done it that time. So yeah, so it's quite similar to how Power BI works when you bring data in for the first time. So you can see I've got my whole database, all of the schemas, all of the different tables built out on here, and I can just go in and click any one of these. I can get a nice little preview of the data as well, just to make sure I'm grabbing what it is that I want. So we'll tick the production product data at this point. This is the one that we want. Then at this point, we can start to use Power Query to shape around, kick our data about, maybe remove some information that we don't need anymore, and get this ready to import into our Dynamics environment. So we're just going to pretend that, okay, well, maybe I just don't want these fields on here. They're a bit rubbish. I'll go slightly further along because there's a whole bunch of relationships that it brings in as well, which again, we're not particularly too fussed about. So we're just going to do remove columns on that. We can see everything that we do to the data is basically an applied step, so we can basically go back at any point and see what we've done and maybe revert what we've done if we need to. But then at this point, yeah, we're just going to remove maybe a few more. We'll remove those on there, remove columns. And we're just going to pretend, okay, at this point, our data is good, it's ready to go. So we're just going to click on next. At this point, it's going to ask us, okay, do we want to map this data to an existing entity in the system, or do we want to create a brand new one automatically? Now, typically, the best practice and preferred way of doing it is that you'd model your data first in CDS and not auto-create it this way, because it's, I don't know about anyone else, but it just feels a little bit dirty. But we're just gonna live on the wild side today and just create it from the data that's in here. So I just need to select a few details on here. So unique primary name field, what alternate key is. So I'll just untick that because we're not too fussed. And then we're just going to make sure we've got loads of new entity ticked. I've got options to be able to delete rows that no longer exist in the query output. So you can try and synchronize your data that way. And then we need to please specify key for this entity. Yeah, we'll just tick that just to get it working through. Finally, we can then specify, okay, do you want to refresh this manually or automatically? So I'm just going to say, okay, every 1 day at this point, let's get the latest copy of the data from here. So already we're able to, with what we've got here, be able to start refreshing data incrementally based on conditions that we specify, from our on-premise data sources, and we've been able to do this within probably 10 minutes. It's quite impressive. So this point is going to go off and create. It's going to create the entity first of all. There's a few different steps involved here in terms of building it out. Whilst we're waiting, what I can also quickly just show you, because we now have got the on-premise gateway in place, we can now leverage it as part of other tools in the Power Platform. Can't even say it, Power Platform as well. So what we can do is, so let's say I just want to create a Canvas app. I can get the Canvas app to point to my on-premise data source and build out a whole app for me that's basically ready to go and it's functional. So I just click phone layout over here. We've got our SQL Server database over here. I can again just search for my data in the list on here. So it should be production.product. Yep. So connect to that. Now what it's doing is detecting the data, and it's going to build me up a fully functional app that not only lets me read the data from my data source, but also update it as well and add new records if I wanted to as well, which is really good. So give it a second to load, then we'll give it a quick test drive. So we see we've got, it's done a pretty okay job in terms of auto detecting the fields that we want to work with. But you might need to just tinker about with the app anyway. But let's say you wanted to edit this on here. So we'll just rename this to D365 UG is amazing, because it is. So that's been committed on there, and then just to make sure that there's no smoke and mirrors, what we can do is a quick query on here just to confirm that we have updated that data source successfully and it's not a replica copy. Yep, there it is. So it's really good just being able to build an app like that from scratch. That's basically almost good to go. You just need to change a few colors, put a company logo on, boom, and you can start impressing people in the organization, which is what we want to do. It's nice when we can do really cool things and people just look at us and go, how did you do that? That's amazing. So that's the great thing about this. Okay, so we can see that it's completed all of that. If I now, so our data is now in there, it's ready to start to be viewed and worked with. So what we can do is I can jump across into Advanced Find. Hopefully it should load fairly quickly. I did give it a kick before it started. So we navigate down to our product entity. Where's it gone? Our new product entity rather. There might be a couple in here, but let's see. I think it's the second one. Let's have a look. Yeah. So as you can see, 504 records, all loaded in, all ready to go. So yeah, so we've done an integration in less than 20 minutes. Isn't that great? Okay, so hopefully it's been useful. You can see as part of this, okay, just how easy it is. I mean, that's the point, it is easy. The gateway is going to handle everything for us from a security aspect. It's going to make sure that we can use it across different areas of the Power Platform as well. So it really is a great solution, and one that I would recommend that you start out with when you're just dipping your toe in as part of the whole integration stuff. Okay, I can see there's a couple of questions in the chat. I'm just going to make some progress on the slide decks, and then I'll come back to the questions at the end, if that's okay. Right, so let's restart from here. How do you do it? From current slide. Okay, so we need to try and avoid being totally obsessive when it comes to adopting Microsoft solutions. So just for a bit of balance and just to give you a flavor about what else is out there, I'm just going to touch upon some other third-party tools which I've used and have experience using in the past, discuss them at a high level. There may be more out there. If there are more, please let me know. I'd be interested to sort of check them out. But here are probably the three most well-known ones. This one here is probably, if you've done any integration or any sort of complex thing involving Dynamics, chances are you've used the Kingsway soft adapter at some point. And the great thing about this is that it lets us use the tools that integration specialists work with all the time, namely SSIS. We can just bolt on additional capability as part of that and start to get our data from our on-premise or from any other environment into the Power Platform. So it's a great tool. It's tried and tested. People like it because of its long history and pedigree. What I would say is that my concern with it at the moment is that over time, SSIS as an option feels as if it's going to be something that is going to be gradually replaced by, for example, Azure Data Factory in terms of as the go-to tool around integrations. And really, whereas Data Factory, is a managed service, you don't need to worry about servers, you don't need to worry about all the baggage that comes with that. Problem with tools like SSIS is you need on-premise infrastructure behind it to get the most benefit out of it. And certainly for a solution like Kingswaysoft as well, additional cost. So you're not just needing to have your full-blown SQL Server license, but you need to have a licensing cost. And the Kingswaysoft license cost isn't too bad, particularly compared to some of the other options that are available, but it is going to add to cost over time, depending on how many different servers you want to integrate things into. And final thing to mention is that this is just literally for lift and shift your data into CDS. So you're not going to get other support around Power Apps, Power Automate, things like that. So, I would say, it's a reliable solution. It's one that's got a lot of history. It's one that people sort of like. I would start to question in terms of long term as a solution, how it's going to sort of be matched. And when we also consider the fact that Kingswaysoft now also have a adapter license for Azure Data Factory for this product, I think that tells you everything you need to know. I think they're starting to see the future direction of where things are going to be going. Another one, which I don't know about anyone else, but certainly I think used to have quite a lot of popularity, but just seems to maybe have dropped off the radar a little bit, is Scribe Online. So it's sort of changed ownership recently. Tibco now own it. It's been sort of integrated along their sort of product. And again, it does tick a few boxes in terms of providing, for example, a fully managed experience. You've got some nice features attached to it. So being able to do fetch XML querying and things like that, support for other data sources. You've got some nice control as well over how it's deployed out. So whether you want it on, Azure data centers or AWS, you've got the option here as part of that. What I would say is that it's quite expensive. You're going to have to be paying probably somewhere close to £4,000 a year, to basically maintain this, which is probably the most expensive, certainly more expensive compared to Kingswaysoft. So, you have to sort of question in terms of what the benefit is with that. Like with Kingswaysoft as well, this is literally just, again, get my data from a database into CDS. That's it. Nothing else you're going to have as part of that. And again, my feeling with it at the moment, and this is purely just my feeling, it's been acquired by Tibco recently. You can see there's like a new experience layered as part of it as well. It just feels to me as if that there could be some changes. Maybe if you're exploring it for the first time, it might not be a safe bet potentially. And I think the fact that it is quite expensive as well does make it potentially a something maybe that's a little bit further down the list in terms of options to look at. But if I'd be interested if anyone's got any is using Scribe and has some is using it currently and thinks they're going to be using it more in the future. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts on that. But yeah, this is what I think at the moment. Then a final option, one that sort of has sort of been around for a few years. I first started working with it a couple of years back when it was sort of just first release, but since then they've done some updates to it, and it's got a little bit better for a few different reasons. The first reason being is that it's similar to the other ones. It supports all your data sources, including Dynamics 365. We've got two things that maybe makes it stand out. The first is you've got the capability of being able to work with your Dynamics 365 data as if it was a SQL Server database. So you can see on the screenshot on here, I've connected up to my Dynamics 365 instance. It's brought in all my entities from the system, and I can now run standard SQL commands against that. So not just select statements, but also update, delete, things like that. And what this tool will do behind the scenes, it will convert it about into the correct OData query or whatever it is, fire it off, and then execute it and stuff like that. So that's quite nice. The second one is that it also has got the ability to let you stand up a fully compliant OData endpoint that, again, can link to your on-premise data. So going back to the earlier example where maybe you need an Azure web app to basically expose out virtual entities, this could be a far easier option to look at because you just with a few clicks of a button, boom, you've got an OData endpoint ready to go, connected to your SQL Server database. Let's start querying it and working with it as if it's from a virtual entity. So it's got those two things on there. It is also free, but when you're starting to do serious things with it, that's when you're going to have to start paying up. And potentially over time, it's going to be quite costly for frequent and more complex integrations. Certainly cheapest compared to some of the other options. My experience with them in terms of from a support standpoint, it wasn't particularly great. I was using the free plan, so they're probably just punishing me for being a cheapskate. Things might have changed. It's certainly looking a lot better now. And it is worth mentioning that they are hosted on Microsoft Azure, but it looks like most of it is in US data centers as well. So, potentially if you're working with Europe or UK based orgs, there could be some latency or maybe even some data residency concerns around that. But this one's one to watch, I think. This one could start to, if it matures, if it sort of irons out some of the issues around the edge, I think this could be one to maybe consider in the future. Okay, so wrapping up then. So you'll have to excuse the Simpsons Frinkiac there image. As I'm sure most of you have been doing with lockdown, Disney Plus has been a bit of a savior. So I'm just working my way through the Simpsons. This one seemed particularly apt. So looking at all the options then, have we got a winner? Well, as usual, I'm on the fence about it all. It's what I do best. I think ultimately it depends on what you're trying to do, where you are with your journey, how, what exactly you're trying to do. And it could be that, in fact, that maybe one or two of these options working together in tandem could actually address your entire needs. So, for example, if you want the ability to have the flow and the Power Apps connectivity, but also need to do some rather complex data processing, then that's when Data Factory and the on-premise gateway might work quite well together. Certainly, I've been involved in projects where that is actually happening, where you're using both tools simultaneously to do different needs. So when we start to think about, okay, well, can we sort of categorize? Can we give sort of awards out for each particular tool? We can look at doing that. So best supporting actors, so the tool that's probably the best one to sort of, the most prestigious award, or the tool that's going to help support you the best. I'd probably say self-hosted integration runtime. So for those situations where you're doing more complex things, that's going to really help you along. I think the Lifetime Achievement Award, this probably tells you all you need to know. It's somebody maybe who's coming to the end of their career and has had really good innings, but yeah, maybe it's time to sort of settle down. Maybe I think that's got to go to Kingsway Soft. I don't know. I'd be interested to hear other people's thoughts, but I just think long term, I just think that's going to be sort of put on the wayside a bit. Best Newcomer Award, somebody to keep an eye on. I think we touched upon this already. Skyvia could be a really good one to look at. And really the best picture, the most prestigious award, the one that everyone wants, which tool can sort of win that? It's got to be the on-premise gateway. It gives you the most. It's really nice and easy to install, as we've hopefully seen as part of the demo today. It's not difficult as well, and it gives you quite a lot to do as well, which is great. So in closing then, what I would say is, okay, if you're involved in a Power Platform project, if you're looking to utilize some or all aspects of Dynamics 365 or the surrounding tools around it, it's really important that you've got a plan or an action plan that involves integration alongside your on-premise data sources. It's going to be so essential to get the most value out of the platform and also start to leverage some benefits from what you've got sitting on-premise that may just be covered in cobwebs or just not being used at all. And as said already with the demo today, the on-premise gateway, we've hopefully seen that this is really easy to set up. Therefore, the excuse goes out the window. Take a look at it, consider it, make sure it's in there early on as part of building out your solution for the first time. And really, okay, as I said already, these solutions can work well in isolation or in tandem. So just find the blend that works well for you. And hopefully what I've been able to do is to highlight the sort of the specific benefits of each one and how it sort of can address a particular concern. And this one gets thrown around quite a bit. It's not happened yet. I think Steve Mordew is probably the one who's been banging the drum with this the most, but I think it's worth bearing in mind that long term, for business application systems like CRM systems and things like that, I think really, unless you've got absolutely strict requirements around legal hold of your data or residency, on-premise is going to go, because it just causes more trouble than it's worth. And with a cloud business application system like Dynamics 365 or with the tools of the Power Platform, you can achieve so much more, and you've not got that baggage with you. You're not having to maintain the costly server infrastructure. You're not having to do updates every month. You're not having to sort of do all that horrible stuff. I'm quite lazy, so my mindset is I want to find a solution that's easy to maintain but delivers the most benefit. So my mindset is, okay, any situation involving an on-premise server, boom, go out the window. I don't want to deal with it. It's a problem I don't want to deal with because it's just going to cause so much hassle long term. So keep that in your back of your mind. Start thinking in terms of, okay, this is what's going to eventually happen. It might not, and in which case you can sort of say, yeah, you were wrong, Joe, and I'll just be like, yeah, okay, that's Okay, so we've got, I think we've got about a few minutes for questions, Faraday. Is that Faraday? Is that okay?
Yeah, you've got about, I'd say, a good 10 minutes of questions. The next session's at 4:30. So, yeah, if anybody wants to ask any questions, feel free. I think there are some in the chat, if you can see that.
Yeah, so
Jay House has asked 2 or 3 questions.
Yeah, so yes, he's mentioned there about the costs associated with the gateway. So the costs, I guess, would be purely, so I mean, if we assume, let's say there's a scenario where you know, maybe you're in an existing you know, private cloud environment and they're charging you for data transfers in and out, that could be maybe the only cost associated with the gateway. There could be other human costs potentially around, okay, occasionally having to update it and things like that. Other than that, there's no monetary cost to it, apart from the fact that you need to have the subscriptions available to be able to start using it. So whether that's a Power BI Professional or Common Data Service license, Dynamics 365 license, etc., that's what you're going to need to start effectively using it, really. Okay, I think that's it for questions. It's a good comment there in terms of the Scribe Soft focusing more on their PaaS offering. Yeah, I think that, I don't know, I just think it's going to be down to slow def personally. I might be wrong, but that's just the impression I get when looking at it these days. It's just little things that you notice with it. It just feels to be sort of going out the window. So Jay House again, so no cost for storage of the data you create. So provided that you are within your limit, so if you're importing data, let's say, into the Common Data Service, provided that your subscription has given you the allowance for the data, so whether it's 5, 10, 15, 20 gigabytes, etc., there'll be no additional cost towards that. If you start to go over that, then you're going to have to buy additional sort of like licenses, top-up licenses, to basically get you to the point where, yeah, I've got enough storage on there. But that's the only cost there potentially. Okay.
I'll just add on Kingsway Soft. I've only ever used it for doing one-off migrations from on-prem to online. I found it to be very, very useful, and using it in that scenario is completely free. You don't have to pay to use the product, so it's worth a look if you're doing that sort of thing.
Yeah, because you just run it from Visual Studio, in which case,
indeed, yes.
I guess if you're in situations where it needs to run regularly and you've got additional baggage, we need to have an SIS server, don't you know? That sort of stuff,
and then you'd need to pay for it. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
But as I say, it's interesting that they are now thinking and responding to the fact that you've got things like Azure Data Factory on the scene now. You know, so I think that's an interesting thing just to highlight. Okay, has anyone got any more questions at all?
Well, I guess if there are no more questions, we can wrap that up.
Yeah,
thank you very much, Joe, for that very informative presentation, highly interesting. As ever, it just goes to prove that the overall platform has so many things that we all need to learn about and so many options. It's just amazing. So thanks for demystifying that area for us. So for everyone else, don't forget that we do have the Ask the Expert session in about 10 minutes time. I did post the link into the meeting chat. It is in a different meeting. So with that, thank you again, and I'll stop the recording.
Thank you.